What is going on, folks? It is Dr. Remy LeBeau, and I'm coming at you once again from the X Layer to provide you my deep and insightful thoughts on the latest Spider-Man movie that just came out. I was fortunate enough to watch Spider-Man No Way Home today. I got to watch the first showing here in the U.S. I'm in Los Angeles. I watched a 3:30 showing. First show. Nobody's walking out, spoiling anything. The theater's packed, but everybody was COVID safe and whatnot. And there were big surprises in the movie. I got a really nice experience out of this whole thing. A lot of things I did not expect happened. A lot of things you expected were going to happen that people speculated on, and there were rumors about it, etc., etc. That even though all that information was out there, it was never 100% verified, and so you never truly knew that it would happen until it actually did fucking happen. And then you're like, holy fucking shit, this is actually fucking happening, and I'm seeing it happen. And it's so surreal that I can't necessarily process all of it, but I know I love it. But there's so much going on in terms of just like all this like past joy that came into the moment and then sort of just kept layering itself, layer upon layer upon layer of all these great sort of threads that were never tied up or I really fucking enjoyed. It all sort of came together, and it was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. I want to thank Marvel Studios. I want to thank Amy Pascal, the producer on Sony's part. I want to thank Kevin Feige, who's responsible for all of this. They really delivered on this one. They really did something special here. They basically Avengers the Spider-Man movies. All the Spider-Man movies that have been made, they basically made a sequel to all of them with one movie. I love when they fucking do that. I love when they do it well. And here they did it, and they did it well. I mean, people are going to talk about, plot holes and things of this sort, but it's like, we're dealing with fantasy here ultimately. Like, all these elements that allow a lot of this to happen are fantastical elements. And like, either you suspend your disbelief or you don't suspend your disbelief. But in the end, like, it is what it is. Like, it's not fucking real. It's movies. It's comics. It's stories. It's something that is on its own a unique thing. But because it's such a moneymaker, people make so much of it, and it ultimately feels like there is a saturation. But like, there's only one place. There's only one entity that is doing it 100% right, and that is Marvel Studios. And Kevin Feige is 100% the person that is most responsible for this. And then there are a couple of other folks that I need to learn their names that are very like critical in sort of executing a lot of this on top, beyond just like all the talent that's involved, which is just astronomical on every creative level for these movies. And that was consistent in this movie. All right, folks. I've kept it vague to some extent, but I'm going to go right into like really specific spoilery stuff. So buckle in. At this point, I'm assuming you've seen the movie. If you have not seen the movie, please shut this video off. Do not let anyone spoil this movie for you. Like, if you are a fan of this stuff, like, you deserve to have a pure experience where you are really going to simply be taken in by what you are watching and just love the shit out of it, Because I know I love the shit out of it, and I think a lot of people deserve to love the shit out of it. So the film opened up, the first act is basically sort of dealing with the aftermath of Far From Home, right? Far From Home, at the end, Mysterio has revealed to the world that Peter Parker's identity is Spider-Man. Spider-Man's identity is Peter Parker. You know what I mean. And so now we're like immediately at the moment that we left off Peter and MJ in the end of the post-credit sequence, or the mid-credit sequence of No Way Home. Far From Home. And we immediately get the aftermath of that moment. And I thought they did such a good job at sort of highlighting all the different ramifications of that plot development in a succinct and like quick way. Like, you don't want to dwell on that shit, because ultimately that is the catalyst for Peter asking for the spell from Doctor Strange. So we got to get to that, but we also got to cover all the things that matter practically, like, right? Like, Peter's getting arrested, right? The cops are there to get him. They get him. They arrest him. They arrest May. They arrest his friends. They arrest Happy. May is being called an enabler of child endangerment. Like, things are fucking serious. And then all of a sudden, we get this wonderful fucking surprise. And it's not necessarily a surprise in the sense that it came completely out of the blue, but it was not 100% verified. I saw a photo online that sort of was from the moment we saw, but I didn't register it as true, and nobody really highlighted it as true. But today is Thursday. On Tuesday at midnight, Hawkeye episode 5 dropped. And at the very end of that episode, we saw an image of Vincent D'Onofrio as the Kingpin. Finally, in the MCU. That Marvel, at that point, acknowledging that the Netflix universe of Daredevil, be it the same universe or an adjacent version, exists within the Marvel universe. And that is fucking awesome. These characters were beloved. I fucking love them. I love the Kingpin in that series. I thought Vincent D'Onofrio was perfect. And of course, Charlie Cox as Daredevil was perfection. I mean, season 3 was fucking awesome. I just, the show, it felt like it was a good send-off, but ultimately, when we were told that it was quote-unquote canceled and that there was a possibility Marvel was not going to continue, like what we saw in some iteration, like, that was very disappointing, because, like, it's one thing to have something that sucks, like, be taken from you, which is like, okay, fine, just try something else. Good. This is not that great. Go another direction. I'm willing to open up that door and walk into it with you, you know? But in this case, it wasn't that. It was like business stuff got in the way, and therefore Daredevil was taken from us. But now he's been given back to us, and all of a sudden, pretty fucking quickly, we see fucking Matt Murdock in the kitchen with May and Happy and Peter, and it's this wonderful moment. It doesn't really go anywhere beyond that, which I am perfectly happy with, because it's an acknowledgement that Matt Murdock exists. Matt Murdock is a lawyer in this world, and now we know Kingpin exists, so, like, these elements are set up now. So, and plus, we are moving forward into a world where Peter is now sort of on his own and not necessarily an Avenger anymore, basically, at the end of this movie. Spoilers, but this is a spoiler review. So if that is the case, then maybe having Matt Murdock there is important, because Matt Murdock is going to play an important part in the future movies. I'm hoping John Bernthal well as well, who played the Punisher in the Netflix series. He was phenomenal as a Punisher. I mean, he also deserves to have more life, as well as Karen Page, which is played by what's her name? I follow her on Twitter, but she used to be on True Blood. Jessica, Karen Page, the actress, wonderful. Like Ducky, not Ducky. What's his name? His best friend. Not Bucky. Anyway, his best friend also in it. Potentially, hopefully, also in the original shows. Hopefully, he's in this new iteration. Maybe he'll be in the Spider-Man movies. Maybe not. Maybe they're doing something different. It looks like the Echo show might do something in terms of, like, bringing more of that sort of Daredevil Kingpin element into it. But maybe there's something more that we don't know about that's coming. But having Punisher be introduced in the MCU within a Spider-Man movie would be perfect, because Punisher was introduced in an Amazing Spider-Man comic book. So he's essentially essentially a Spider-Man related character. So it would make sense to introduce the Punisher in Spider-Man. And having set up a world where, you know, Peter's now on his own and he's not known by the Avengers anymore. They're not going to be calling him or anything of that sort. Like, and he's kind of going to be doing his own thing. This gives him an opportunity to sort of explore some of these storylines. But I'll get to more of that later when I get to the post-credit sequence. The mid-credit sequence, which was fascinating, and then the post-credit sequence, which was, of course, just a trailer for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which, fucking awesome, by the way. Fucking awesome. So we get that wonderful moment in the kitchen with Matt Murdock. Ultimately, things start to unravel. their lives start to unravel. The characters are now in a situation where they may not be able to go to college because of the information that's known publicly, the sort of divisive nature of the knowledge that Peter is Spider-Man, that people think he killed Mysterio, and that, you know, his friends are implicated, therefore they were accomplices, therefore they themselves are also being affected by this whole knowledge. So Peter then goes to Doctor Strange, and then we get the spell, and then we get things to go out of whack. All very consistent with what we understand about Doctor Strange, because Doctor Strange, even though he is a sorcerer and he was labeled the Sorcerer Supreme, and he went up against Thanos and he held his own. He's a damn good sorcerer. Is he the Sorcerer Supreme in the MCU, though? I'm glad they made Wong the Sorcerer Supreme, you know, because that ultimately establishes that Wong, who has the experience, deserves to have that position. And I think that's pretty fucking awesome. I'm registering this now, right now. Oh, shit. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is directed by Sam Raimi. So that trailer that they showed at the end was for a Sam Raimi movie. That didn't even register until now. Wow. 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 After what we saw in this movie, to see another Sam Raimi Marvel movie, oh, that's so cool. Anyway, the spell goes haywire, and then Spidey goes and tries to save him and his friends, well, his friends' chances to go to MIT, and then we fucking get Doc Ock that shows up. And we get that wonderful fight between Spidey and Doc Ock. Alfred Molina looks fucking fantastic. I went with a friend of mine. He mentioned that, like, the de-aging was not noticeable, and in fact, probably almost perfect, and I agree 100%. Like, the de-aging was freaking perfect. I thought they did a great fucking job with it. And I didn't question that Alfred Molina was the Alfred Molina from the Doc Ock from the end of Spider-Man 2. Like, I did not question that. And I thought that was fucking phenomenal. So we get that wonderful fight between them. Peter's nanotech takes over the arms of Doc Ock. Dope. And then we get that moment where the Goblin shows up that we saw in the trailer, but then we get into Doctor Strange's place, and it wasn't quite clear what happened at that moment. That wasn't necessarily explained. I'm assuming Doctor Strange did something, but I don't understand exactly what. Was it teleportation? If it was, then how? When did why was Alfred Molina teleported, but not the Green Goblin? I have to watch it again to sort of get a clarification about sort of what happened in that moment. So then Alfred Molina's locked up, and then it's revealed that there's these other villains out there, and then Peter goes after them, right? And then that's when we encounter Electro, Sandman, Lizard, and of course the Green Goblin. So he doesn't encounter the Green Goblin. We see the Green Goblin hang up his mask. So that was good because we get to see Willem Dafoe, which for me, I think seeing Willem Dafoe again as the Green Goblin was probably one of the most satisfying things of this entire movie. And though there was so much in the movie to love, but he is such a great Norman Osborn, and he was such a great Norman Osborn in the original Spider-Man movie. And that was a big problem, I feel, with all the old sort of superhero movies besides the X-Men franchise. They kept just killing off the villains. These excellent villains they would build up, they would just kill them off. I mean, to get an opportunity to once again have Willem Dafoe play the Green Goblin in a Spider-Man movie is fucking awesome. And for him to once again shine as the great threat that he is, this horrible, terrible villain that he is, it was so good. Like, for him to be the one that kills Aunt May, you know? And then for him to be sort of the final boss, in a sense, at the end, you know? It was being as laudatory as the depiction of that character needs to be within the Marvel universe. Like, it's just, that's been missing, you know. Spidey's great villains, they've been missing, you know, because there was so much behind the scenes stupidity going on that they just screwed it up, you know. But they got it right again by bringing Willem Dafoe in. And then he had that great sort of moment where he had the green outfit below, but then he had sort of a tattered purple like hoodie, and it made him look like evocative of like the purple and green Goblin, which is so cool. It's so close to what it was in the comics, but it doesn't need to be a direct translation of what it is in the comics, because it doesn't need to be. The comics are the comics, and movies are the movies. I don't know. I love that so much. So we get him. He hangs up the mask. He goes back to being a regular person. Like, his split personality allows him to be Norman Osborn again. And then that takes him to searching for Peter, and he goes to the place where there's a picture of Spider-Man, I guess. And that ultimately gets him to the homeless shelter. And that's where May is. And then that ultimately connects him to Peter. And then ultimately we gather the troops, right? We get the Electro battle. We see Jamie Kennedy again. He's much better this time around. It was great. We got a nice half naked moment with him. Always wonderful to see Jamie Kennedy half naked. Jamie Foxx half naked, fucking awesome. Good looking guy, good looking man. Happy to have him back as Electro. Did a good job, much better than before. The thing that was really good about the film is that it tied up a lot of these narratives that were sort of just tied up by like characters dying, right? So he got his resolution, Doc Ock got his resolution, Willem Dafoe got his resolution, the Lizard got to become the human being again, Dr. Connors. Who else do we have? We had Sandman. He became human again. He became human again. So we got these great resolutions for all the villains that had been just killed off, and they got their sort of nice endings, which is cool. I really like that aspect of it. Like, again, like I mentioned, this is like they Avengers the Spider-Man movies, the Spider-Man cinematic universe. They made the sequel to all the movies, ultimately allowing there to be that lovely sort of conclusion, in a sense, to the stories of these other versions of these characters, and opening the door for sort of parallel versions in this world. So there can be an Alfred Molina that is Doc Ock in this universe. There can be a Jamie Foxx who is Electro in this universe. There can be a Willem Dafoe, even though he said there was no Oscorp. Like, that doesn't mean there isn't an Oscorp. He just couldn't find Oscorp. But it's possible there is an Oscorp. It's possible there is a Norman Osborn, and it's possible that it is played by Willem Dafoe. I think it would be a good move. I think Willem Dafoe is an excellent Norman Osborn, and I think we need that. I'm willing to keep going with this, because Norman Osborn is a big villain in the comics, and Willem Dafoe is so good at playing him. It's such a convincing villain, and it's just like, I want more and more and more and more and just more, just more and more, just a lot more. Because he's so good, He's so freaking good, man. God. So he gathers, so Peter ultimately gathers the Sinister Six, as it were. And then, there's the whole thing of Doctor Strange is like, well, I'm going to send them back and they're all going to die, because everybody talks about how they all die. And then Peter's like, no, I got to redeem them. Nice. Based on the influence of May, who's like, we got to help these people. So I really like what they did with May in this movie. I like that they turned her into the Uncle Ben, the one that gives with great power comes great responsibility speech. I thought that was wonderful. To really give that onus, the importance of that fundamental guiding principle of Peter's, to give that to May to be the source, I think is wonderful. Because like we had that lovely moment where all of the Spider-Men were talking, and they were all sort of chatting about their motivations for sort of following this code. And it's like, and it was good to have the other two say, well, Uncle Ben died, and said this thing to us. Because it really kind of emphasized, well, like, we've done this story, like this story has been told in this way. Like, this is another way to tell it. And why not? May was a cool person, like in the trilogy, Marissa Tomei did a great job playing Aunt May. So I feel like it was just a really sort of respectful way to honor the character of May, because May has always kind of been like this kind of old woman in the sidelines character. And then they've been trying to do more with her over the years, but like she's rooted so much in that identity that it was I think, hard to kind of get her out of that shell, that sort of box. But I think this movie might influence that, to some extent, and maybe further the potential for what Aunt May could ultimately represent, even in the comics. Who knows? I don't know I don't know how the comics are ultimately going to go in terms of a lot of what we saw. In terms of, kind of like that parallel echoing that happens between the comics and the movies. It's never one-to-one, but there's sort of this, like, there's elements that each of them borrow from each other. It's really an interesting thing. I love it. I think it's such a cool sort of intermingling of these, like, mediums of telling stories that are linked, and they're sort of they're on parallel tracks, but they're also in completely different tracks. I love it. I think it's wonderful. So we got the troops together, and then, it seems like, okay, now we're like going to solve everybody's problems, and that's going to resolve the thing. And of course, ultimately, fucking the Green Goblin comes back, right? And that's when all hell breaks loose. And it's just like, it's exactly what I would expect that moment to become, because, like, you have, like, all these major villains in this, like, fucking townhome, in like a high rise. It's like, this is not gonna go well. Like, because you see Peter standing in the room with all these villains, and we the audience, we know, like, this is not gonna go. These are bad people. These are, like, really bad people, and you just have them walking around as though they're fine, and they're not. Oh, look, I forgot the part where Peter fights Doctor Strange and puts him in the mirror dimension. I thought that was phenomenal, and the fact that later he came back and he's like, yeah, I fought Doctor Strange and I won. I thought that was so fucking awesome. Because, as a fan person, like, I fucking love those moments of, like, this character versus this character, go. Like, when Doctor Strange was fighting Thanos in Infinity War, that was just, like, crack for me. When Doctor Strange, Spidey, and Iron Man were first fighting the harbingers of Thanos, the ones that came to take Doctor Strange's time stone in Infinity War. That was just a geek out moment, right? Just like having so many characters interact and then fight other characters, really exciting stuff. Anyway, so that was a fun moment, and then obviously that took us to him breaking them out, and that's why they were in that condo, or whatever. But that's not going to go well. Like, it's not going to go well. And Norman Osborn is not simply going to be Norman Osborn. Norman Osborn is fucking this terrible human being. He's a monster, and that monster was going to come out. I wish there was, like, a moment of, like, avenge me. I wish there was a moment of that happening, because that's one of the classic Willem Dafoe, like, Green Goblin lines, like, avenge me, Harry, avenge me. It's so fucking good. It's so fucking campy, just over the top. But Willem Dafoe somehow manages to kind of make it, like, almost palatable. I mean, it's still, like, kind of zany. But, like, there's something special about it. We didn't get that moment, but we got these great freaking moments where Spider-Man is just dealing with all the villains in the place. He doesn't have help. He's got to fight the Green Goblin, who ultimately just, like, kills Aunt fucking May, man. Broke my fucking heart. And right before that, she said, with great power comes great responsibility. And that, I've started crying at that moment. Like, I started crying, because I was like, this is so fucking beautiful. And then she died. I'm starting to tear up right now. And then she died, and she had that lovely moment. And Peter was just broken. And Peter was already broken when Tony died. And Tony had just died. I mean, what did it have been now? Maybe 6 months or something? Something like that. Like 7 or 8 months since Thanos and the final battle on Endgame. So he'd just gone through something like that, and then for him to go through it again was, like, crazy. But for it to be Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin to do it, so good. Oh, and Alfred Molina got cured at one point, so he just left. But I knew he would have, like, a hero turn, because he's not a piece of shit. You know, like as a human being not being controlled by that chip, he's just a normal person, and he didn't intend to hurt anybody. But unfortunately, the AI took control of his brain, and that's when things got out of hand, got into eight hands, as it were, because he's an octopus. May asked him if he drinks salt water because he's an octopus. There were some funny moments, some funny moments that were definitely MCU moments. Not moments that would have come out the other Spider-Man film, but maybe. But definitely MCU moments, and I'm all for it because this is the MCU, so let's keep this going. The sort of in between kind of quirky interactions that lead to kind of funny interactions. Like I love that shit. It's a great sort of juxtaposition to all the action and the drama. It's just like nice character moments that are like fun, and as long as it's funny to a good extent and it's not like mean, then it works as nice sort of transitional moments between like the big set pieces. So we get the big set piece, fucking May dies, Willem Dafoe takes off in that hoodie looking fucking dope. I'm so glad that was not like the Hobgoblin, because there were all sorts of theories that we were going to get all these different versions of characters, and I'm glad we did not, because it was just the right amount. It was just the right amount where everything kind of worked, and there was a nice balance to all of it. So anyway, that moment tears Peter up. He's lost. Then you get MJ and Ned. Oh, we had a wonderful moment earlier with Ned where he finds out that oh no, this is later. Okay, I'll get to that in a bit. But okay, so Ned and MJ are now looking for Peter, right? And Ned has the ring, Doctor Strange's ring that makes the portals. And it's implied that he has sort of a magical power set. I wonder if he's going to become a sorcerer at some point. That'd be really cool to see Ned become a sorcerer. I would really love that. We'll see. Maybe he pops up in Multiverse of Madness, It's possible. Because at this point, they all forgot Peter, but they didn't forget each other. So maybe they have a memory of each other. And that sort of leads him to be in that movie. It's possible. I would really enjoy that, actually, if Ned was involved in that. And his grandmother. I really liked his grandmother as well. I thought that was a lovely sort of element of a movie, of the point where it happened. Actually, it happened at the point where, so they are at the house with the grandmother. They create the portal looking for Peter. You see a fucking Spider-Man, and that is when fucking Andrew Garfield comes in to the portal, and he takes off his mask, and it's fucking Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man, it's fucking Andrew, it's happening, it's real, it's really happening, it's not fake, they weren't lying, like it's fucking happening. It was fucking dope. It was fucking awesome, man, to see Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man again, because he was fucking awesome in those Amazing Spider-Man movies. The movies themselves, not so great, but him, fantastic. I loved him. And Emma Stone and him together, their chemistry, fantastic. The moment where Emma Stone died broke my fucking heart. I have a review on my channel for Amazing Spider-Man 2, and I wound up giving that movie kind of okay marks because of their story, I ignored all the other terrible parts that were horrible, like fucking Harry Osborn becoming the Goblin was awful. Anyway, I'm not going to go into all that shit, but the moment where Emma died, where Gwen Stacy died, that fucking broke my heart. And then Andrew Garfield fucking just having that moment of kind of going through the motions of the aftermath of that, and then him kind of popping up as Spider-Man again, it didn't feel like enough, and then we get more of that story, and I thought that was so wonderful. Not only did we get the resolution, in a sense, to all the other characters, all these villains from these other movies, but we also got it for Andrew Garfield, and then of course Tobey Maguire. So we get wonderful moments with Andrew Garfield, and then we bring Tobey Maguire in. That fucking blew my mind, because nobody was talking to Tobey Maguire. Andrew Garfield is in Tick Tick Boom right now, which is a musical directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda, which I hear is really good. It's on Netflix, I believe. I have not watched it. I will be watching it. I hear Andrew Garfield is phenomenal in it. I love him as an actor. I think he's got so much charisma. I thought he was a great Peter Parker. We got some great fucking moments with him. And then ultimately sort of a self-disparaging thing where sort of the idea that he never got better after Gwen died, and he kind of went down dark paths, and he stopped pulling his punches, so he probably became this dark Superman, this dark Spider-Man. Him sort of going through that, and then ultimately like getting these moments now where he sort of gets to have the aftermath of that, right? Like a real aftermath. I forgot exactly where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought there for a second. But he went down this dark place, and then we got to have like sort of an understanding of where he went, right? And I know I lost something there, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm 30 minutes in. I've watched a 3-hour movie and I fucking loved it. Anyway, we get some nice moments with Andrew. Then Tobey Maguire comes in. Oh yes, we saw him, Andrew Garfield, having like interviews and shit for Tick Tick Boom, and people were asking him questions, and he straight up legitimately was saying like, I am not in this fucking movie. But we never saw Tobey Maguire because Tobey Maguire hasn't been in anything recently. So to see him on screen again, I'm like, clearly he's older and he looks great. He looks fantastic. He's in great shape. He still looked like Peter Parker, but he looked like an older Peter Parker. And I'm like, good. Peter Parker should age. And then we get to hear that him and MJ are like together, you know. It's so lovely, you know. It's such a lovely thing. And then like sort of anyway, okay. So the two Spider-Men are there. We get Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield together. Fucking geekgasm every second. Fucking wonderful. And then we get the lovely grandma sort of kind of like doing this weird thing where it kind of kept us in the MCU by her kind of being like the character where she's having, you know, sort of observations from the point of view of just a general person that has no idea what all of this means. And she's just like, I don't want webs all over my fucking house, you know? Like that sort of juxtaposed against like the importance of having these two Spider-Men together. Like there was something really nice about the balance of that all. And of course, having Ned and MJ there, fantastic. Like all of it sort of worked. And then ultimately they go find Peter, and we have this great fucking moment on the roof. I think it's of the high school, right? That's where the kids were. That's where they went towards the beginning of the movie. I believe that's the same spot. MJ and Ned go to Peter, and then we get the two Spider-Men come in, and then we get the wonderful meeting of the three, and Peter's just going through the worst thing he could possibly be going through, and they're there to ultimately be able to fucking focus him a bit and just like, dude, like we've been through this shit, like we are you, like we've gone through this. And like, you need to go through stuff. And like, it was just such a wonderful sort of, just like a guiding moment where it also symbolically, I'm thinking about it now. It's just like, it's kind of like you've had Nick Fury as a mentor, right? You've had Tony Stark as a mentor. You know, you've had Happy, you've had Doctor Strange. Like, you need to just be Spider-Man. And who better to kind of get him on the path of being just Spider-Man than the other fucking Spider-Men that weren't part of Avengers, that weren't part of teams. They were their own Spider-Man. And so it's just such a I was in this state of like weird fucking joy, euphoria for like probably a good 20 to 30 minutes. Where just like everything was wonderful. I was just like, I'm watching everything I ever wanted in life. You know, it's just like all these lovely things coming together. So fucking wonderful, man. It's just so good. So fucking great. Just seeing them all together, and then, you know, them having their moments where, so now they're like, okay, the plan is we're gonna cure all the villains, right? And so they're all like kind of having the moment of coming up with the cures. And those are the moments where we get some deep character interactions. Ultimately, we get the self-deprecating Andrew Garfield like thing where he's just like, I guess I'm number 3. That's ultimately what he called himself in the battle. But you kind of get like the idea where he's like, well, I fucking suck. Like, you've done this and you've done all these things and you guys are cool and I'm not. And it was just sort of a commentary on the quality of his movies as compared to the others, you know? So that was really fun. Like, I love that scene. I can't wait to see that scene again. Just like really kind of soak it all in. Cause it's such a nice thing to kind of watch all these worlds collide and then all of them kind of talking about like, you know, the things they have in common and the things that they don't have in common and kind of their similarities, and ultimately that great fucking moment, which was such like a slapsticky moment, but fuck it, it's so fun. Like where Ned was like, Peter, and then they all answer, and they're like, and they have that whole interaction, like, well, I'm Peter Parker, well, I'm Peter Parker, and then Ned's like, Ned doesn't know what to do to identify them. He's like, Parker, And then they all answer, and he's like, Peter Parker. It's just like, it's silly. It's clearly there for so intentionally. But because everything is so wonderful in the moment, you're just like, the three Spider-Men I love in one scene, having conversations, laughing, and comparing, contrasting. Like, because it was that moment, like that moment that was so fucking over the top and cheesy was wonderful. It was just wonderful. It was such a joy-filled moment. I loved it so much. And I can't wait to watch it again. It's just such a lovely thing. And then ultimately we have the final battle on the Statue of Liberty, and they're remodeling the Statue of Liberty, and they're putting up the Captain America's shield. I really love that. I really love sort of this honoring of the heroes that have passed thing that's happening in the MCU, right? We saw in Hawkeye. I haven't done a review of Hawkeye. I'm going to do a review of Hawkeye once the series is over this week. I'll do a full season review. I didn't want to do an episode per episode review because I'm not so clear on all this stuff that goes on in the comics with Hawkeye and with Kate Bishop and Young Avengers, because I never read that stuff. So I didn't feel like I had enough informed sort of a perspective on those things. But now that they've actually brought in the elements that I knew they were going to bring in, and the last episode is called The Big Boss or something. So it's going to be about Kingpin. I think that warrants me having a big fucking another nerdgasm like I'm having right now. So I'll be talking about that. But in that show, they had, the Captain America musical. And now they were retrofitting the Statue of Liberty with the Captain America shield, which I thought was fucking cool. Ultimately, that did not happen. And the movie was basically saying, we're not fucking with Statue of Liberty. We're going to leave it alone. But it was fun to have that sort of moment, right? And then that ultimately allows us to have our big third act battle. All the villains are there, except Green Goblin. And, every villain has their moment. And ultimately we get Doc Ock coming in, and we get these wonderful we get that wonderful moment where Andrew saves MJ, right? Spider-Man 1, Tom Holland was taken away by... Who was it? Was it the Green Goblin finally at that point? It might have been the Green Goblin finally at that point. MJ's falling, or it was somebody. I think it was the Green Goblin. MJ's falling, and Andrew Garfield catches her. And that was his moment, That was the moment where he was like, it sort of just made up for what happened with Gwen, And it carried so much weight because that moment carries a lot of weight. And even though the whole movie, again, Amazing Spider-Man 2, not a great movie. But the death of Gwen Stacy is a valid, fucking visceral, just emotionally impactful moment that you just love. I loved it when I watched it, and I still love to watch it because it punches me in the face, because Emma Stone is such a good Gwen Stacy, and they had such good chemistry together. And to see her die like that, and for it to basically be his fault, is so awful, and you felt that, but you also don't want your Spider-Man damaged. And then again, he went down a dark path, but this was his redemption. This was a moment of redemption. He got that in the midst of all this fucking crazy shit going on, which I think is fucking wonderful. And then we get a wonderful sort of interaction with Tobey Maguire and Doc Ock, ultimately having their moment where he's back to normal, and they can. And it's Dr. Octavius with fucking Peter. And he's like, Peter, you're an adult now. It's such a wonderful moment, the idea that Doc Ock can then go back to his universe and with Toby's help, Peter's help, have a nice life is nice. Because it wasn't his fault. He was fucked by this technology, but maybe he can have a life, after that, and not be this horrible villain that he ultimately became, And we can get our Doc Ock in our universe, which in MCU, which, cool. And then, of course, we get that wonderful moment with Willem Dafoe coming in. He's the big boss. Of course, the universes are breaking down, right? So that's the beginning of something that ultimately is resolved with Peter asking him to change, to cast the spell he was initially going to cast. I'll talk about that in a second because I'm a little confused about that. Maybe somebody can offer me some insight in the comments, or I'll just watch it again and I'll ultimately understand it. But, you had that wonderful, I love that ultimately Green Goblin was the big bad. He was a horrible bad. And then for him to be taunting Peter and talking about Aunt May the way he did, he was just the most horrible, evil, vile fucking motherfucker. And he was just basically like shoving in his face the fact that he killed his aunt and that he would never see his aunt again. He was like almost kind of proud of it. I mean, he was proud of it. And like the idea that he was trying to take away that ethical foundation, and that for Green Goblin, it's like, if you are a god, then you need to be a god. And people need to revere you as a god. And this moral coil that you have needs to be fucking taken away. And you need to be the god you want to be. And he wanted him to cross lines with him. But ultimately it was Tobey Maguire who came in and fucking stopped him. And it wasn't Peter on his own, but it was Peter in a sense, you know, like this is another Spider-Man, but it's also, they're on similar paths. There's like parallels. It's not him himself, but instead of it being, you know, Tony Stark telling him what he should be doing and like kind of being the one that helps him turn the tide and kind of change, it's another fucking Spider-Man. It's him. He is becoming the full Spider-Man that everybody has wanted the MCU Spider-Man to be. Clearly that was the intent here. And they did a phenomenal job with it. And anyway, that worked, and then he cured fucking Norman, and then Norman got to be Norman again, you know? And then they went back to their universes, you know? So that was lovely. And then we get some last moments with Tobey and Andrew, which were lovely as well. We get a wonderful like kind of thing of like, we're brothers. At some point, I think Andrew called Tobey a brother, and then like they sort of had a brotherly moment, the three, when they all hugged. By the way, there was a wonderful moment with Jamie Kennedy where when Andrew Garfield came with his mask off, Jamie Kennedy was like, oh shit, you're a good looking white dude. I thought you would be black. You're from Queens, whatever. And then he's like, there must be a universe where there's a black Spider-Man. It's like Miles Morales. Like, we didn't see Miles Morales, but clearly, like, we know Miles Morales exists in the multiverse, and it would be lovely to see Miles Morales in live action. But I did watch Into the Spider-Verse, most of it last night, and you know, that really worked for me. And so I love that there's going to be a second one of those. It doesn't necessarily need to be live action. It's fine to keep them in animation because they're doing such a wonderful job with this unique sort of style of animation where they're really playing with the elements and just making this wonderful experience out of an animated film. It's just lovely. I love that movie so much. It's so good. I love it more every time I see it. It's such a work of art. It's so lovely. But yeah, we get that. Okay, so then ultimately Peter tells Doctor Strange, like, I need you to cast the original spell. I need everybody to forget that I'm Spider-Man. I didn't quite understand how that sent everybody home, though. Did Doctor Strange concurrently also press the box thing that undid things? Because I felt like the box thing was holding in the spell, and that had been ruined by Green Goblin's pumpkin bomb. Is what I sort of got from that moment, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's how everybody went back. I have to watch it again to really be clear on that aspect of it. I'm not exactly sure how the spell ultimately sent everybody home. But that was sort of what it was implied. It was implied that like that will stop everything if everybody forgets that you exist. Maybe because the completion of the spell like stops the side effects of the spell. That might be it. The completion of the spell stops the side effects of the spell. Since the original spell can be completed, is finally completed, then all aspects of it beyond what its intent was are eradicated. So everybody forgets Peter is Spider-Man. Everybody forgets Peter Parker, which is interesting. It's an interesting move by everybody, and then everybody goes home. I guess that's what it is. I'm happy with that. It doesn't need to be 100% because ultimately comics movies. So that's usually ultimately going to be the answer. But I'm happy to accept anything they tell me because it's all fantasy. It's not real. What I want is for the stories to be captivating. I want to enjoy myself as a fan of these things and as a film goer, and this movie gave me all of that. I was so happy for so much of this movie. I can't wait to see it again. I love every aspect of it. It's definitely going to take me back to watch the original trilogy again from the 2000s, and then the Andrew Garfield movies again, and then I'm going to watch the MCU Spider-Man movies again. Like, I want to watch them all again, and I want it all to culminate with this movie. And I didn't get to do that prior. I didn't feel I needed to, because I feel like I'm so plugged into the MCU that it's fine. All right, so movie ends with Spidey making his own costume. Everybody's forgotten him. He's got an apartment which looks, it's not the apartment that Tobey Maguire had in New York, but I thought we were getting Mr. Dickovich. I thought Mr. Dickovich was going to enter as a landlord. That would have been really good. I don't know if they thought to do that or not, but I thought that would have been phenomenal. They didn't do it though. I'm fine with that. But he's in a kind of like a rundown apartment. He doesn't have a lot of money. He's probably going to be going to City College, looking to transfer. He'll probably get a job as a photographer for the Daily Bugle, or maybe a videographer for the Daily Bugle. So anyway, and clearly MJ and Ned, I think, are going to be going to MIT, I think. So they're not going to be there anymore. But it looks, I don't know, Peter, it seems, it was sort of implied like their story was ending, or it's just the beginning, I don't know what's going to happen with these other characters. I like the idea of not knowing and just kind of moving forward. Is Peter going to find the real redhead Mary Jane now? Or a Gwen Stacy, Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? It's just a lot of sort of cool possibilities that could happen. Clearly, they want to now isolate him. They want to make these movies that they're going to make moving forward about him in his universe. So that then takes us to the mid-credit sequence. So if you saw Venom, Let There Be Carnage, at the very end of that, there was a post-credit sequence where Eddie Brock is brought into the MCU universe. And at the end of this one, we see him in the MCU universe. He's learning about all the big things that have happened in the MCU. And then he is taken back to his universe, or another universe, which is what happens as a result of the spell, I guess. And so he was there that entire time, but he never interacted with these characters. But he left a piece of the symbiote behind. That's big time. So are we saying now that the symbiote is going to become Peter's black costume for a while? That would be cool. If they are going to do that, I want it to not lead to Venom. I just want it to be him in the black costume, because I think that would be very cool. And then that could lead us ultimately to Null, which is like the symbiote god. They did a great storyline recently, for those of you that don't know, in the Venom comics, the best storyline they've ever done in the Venom comics. It was like a 35-issue run, written by Donny Cates, drawn by Ryan Stegman mainly. And ultimately, it really kind of it elaborated on the lore of the symbiote, like the origins of the symbiote, sort of a lot of aspects that culminated in this big storyline, which was really cool. And it did a lot for the mythos of Eddie Brock. And I can totally see Marvel wanting to kind of play in that sandbox. I think what they might do is sort of lay out a trajectory for Peter without the MCU as his own character, still in the MCU, but without MCU elements, and just kind of have a few of his stories, maybe a black costume, maybe a Venom movie story, and then maybe the next one we can do like a Null thing. I have no idea what they're going to do, to be honest, but I am intrigued by it. And then, of course, finally, we get that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness trailer, which I think is lovely. That's exactly what they did with Captain America, the First Avenger. At the end of that movie, I think the mid-credit sequence was a trailer for the Avengers. So they did the same thing here, where they gave us a trailer for a movie that's already done, that's coming out. This time it's next summer. They were going to do it in March, but I think they wanted to just kind of push it back because of COVID concerns and things of that sort. So that's the next one coming. We get the trailer for it. We saw America Chavez in it, which is this cool, I believe she's she's either lesbian or bi, Latinx girl, lovely character. I don't know her because I don't read the comics with her in it, but I do know she is a popular character. She was introduced over the last 10 years or something. And I believe she's in this movie. I think we saw a person with a jacket with a white star, and I believe that's her look. And we saw Wanda, of course. And then we saw all sorts of weird shit. I would love to see that again. We saw Mordo again. Which is great. This is going to be a big film, and I'm really looking forward to it. But the thing that was really important for me was seeing the Dark Doctor Strange. That's the Dark Doctor Strange from What If. It's the Dark Doctor Strange from What If. Straight the fuck up. They're bringing in what if characters. That means that Captain Carter, Peggy Carter, who became Captain Carter in her universe, is fair game for the movies. And I would love to see Peggy Carter as Captain Carter in the movies. I would love to see that. She is such a great character, and for her arc to take her there, because her arc was ultimately diminished by Cap's arc. And believe me, that moment at the end of Endgame where you see the two of them dancing, and you have that music playing that they were playing in Captain America 1 where they were dancing, that was just Niagara Falls for me. Niagara Falls, baby. So the idea that like, so I love that moment, but still she was kind of made the girlfriend in the background thing that like is the motivation for the guy. And like the idea that we could, go a step further with her character and kind of give her a hero arc herself, I think would be so cool. And I would really love to see that. So I'm looking forward to seeing where all of this goes. I'm really excited by everything. I fucking love this movie. I think all of us are so privileged to be able to enjoy something like this. It's such a lovely gift we get. I mean, things have been weird lately. The last couple of years, things have been freaking upside down. We all know it. We're still dealing with it. But it's just nice to get something like this that kind of has a promise to it, and it actually follows through with that promise, and is as satisfying as you want it to be. It's just such a lovely thing, and we get to enjoy it over and over again. We get to enjoy it consistently for a very long time, and that is just such a wonderful thing. And I couldn't ask for anything more wonderful than that. Anyway, those are my thoughts for this wonderful freaking flick. I loved it so much. I'm so happy that I got to just kind of spew over it here. I hope you enjoyed the time spent at the movie and then with me here. And I hope all of you are doing as well as you possibly could, and that everything is going as well as it possibly can. As always, I want to remind you that if you haven't already, you better put an X in the box, because ain't nobody checking me. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.